He stole billions, shattered Malaysia's reputation, and sent his people into the streets demanding justice. Yet even behind bars, the country's disgraced prime minister proves the untouchable stay untouchable. His 12-year sentence slashed in half. And now, a mysterious royal addendum could move him from a jail cell to a mansion. This is the scandal of power and betrayal. The reminder that prison isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's just theater. May 9th, 2018. Kuala Lumpur. Crowds swarm the streets, waving flags, chanting in disbelief. For the first time in 61 years, Malaysia's ruling coalition has fallen. The man at the center of the collapse, Najib Razak, sits in his residence, stunned. This was the same man who once walked red carpets with world leaders, who used the state's billions like pocket change, who believed his dynasty could never be broken. Now, overnight, he is the face of the greatest humiliation in Malaysian political history. The voters he once courted with promises of growth and prosperity turned against him, united by a single scandal. 1. MDB. Billions siphoned from a sovereign wealth fund meant to lift Malaysia into a new era of development. Instead, the money built Hollywood mansions, funded private jets, and paid for jewelry that dripped from his wife's wrists. Najib's betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal. Malaysians felt robbed not only of their money, but of their pride, their nation dragged into headlines as the stage for the world's biggest heist. News cameras zoomed in as his political dynasty imploded. Party loyalists defected. Former allies whispered in corridors, distancing themselves before prosecutors came knocking. For the first time, Najib faced a choice: flee the country like a coward, or stay and fight a battle he might actually lose. But here's the twist. For most politicians, an election loss like this would be the end. For Najib Razak, it was just Act 1. Because even as the walls of democracy closed in, Najib was already plotting how to twist the legal system to his will. But what Najib did next would prove that some men are truly untouchable, even behind bars. Long before the prison bars and courtrooms, Najib Razak carried himself like a king. He was born into political royalty, the son of Malaysia's second prime minister. By his 20s, he was already in parliament. By his 50s, he was prime minister. But Najib wasn't satisfied with merely leading Malaysia. He wanted to be remembered as the man who transformed it into a financial powerhouse. His tool would be a sovereign wealth fund called 1MDB. On paper, 1MDB was supposed to fund schools, hospitals, and mega projects. In reality, it became Najib's piggy bank. Public money flowed out of state coffers and into secret accounts, money Malaysians would never see again. And at the center of the spending spree was Rosmah Mansor, the self-proclaimed First Lady. She became infamous for shopping trips that cost millions in a single afternoon. At her fingertips, pink diamonds worth $27 million, Birkin bags stacked by the hundreds, luxury watches, and designer gowns. When police raided Najib's properties after his fall, they didn't just find evidence. They found treasure. 12,000 pieces of jewelry, 567 luxury handbags, 423 watches, and $28 million in cash, stuffed into suitcases like cartel money. The sight was so surreal, it made headlines worldwide. For many in Malaysia, it was a moment of outrage and humiliation. Their leaders had stolen not only money, but the nation's good name. And the scandal quickly leapt beyond Malaysia's borders. The U.S. Department of Justice called 1MDB the largest kleptocracy case in history, branding Najib's scheme as a global case study in elite corruption. But Najib wasn't moving the money alone. Behind the diamonds and handbags was another figure, a baby-faced billionaire who turned Malaysia's stolen billions into the wildest party fund the world had ever seen. His name was Jho Low. Jho Low looked nothing like a criminal mastermind. He was pudgy, soft-spoken, with the face of a harmless accountant. But with billions stolen from Malaysia at his fingertips, he became the most infamous playboy in the world. In Las Vegas, he poured champagne by the rivers. In New York, he bought penthouses overlooking Central Park. In Hollywood, he funded The Wolf of Wall Street, life imitating art. And then there were the women. Jho Low showered Miranda Kerr with diamonds, partied with Paris Hilton, and surrounded himself with supermodels flown in for his yacht, the Equanimity. These were gifts bought not with his money, but with Malaysia's stolen billions. But here's the catch. Jho Low didn't pull this off alone. Every wire transfer, every investment, every dollar looted from one MDB, it all depended on Najib. He created the fund. He chaired its board. And the final destination of the money trail wasn't just Jho Low's parties. It was Najib Razak's personal bank accounts. We've already told the full story of Jho Low, the fugitive who vanished into Shanghai under the protection of powerful friends. If you want to see how the world's most wanted billionaire is hiding in plain sight, that video is live on our channel now. Because the bigger scandal here is this. When investigators traced the cash, it didn't just stop at Jho Low's nightclubs. It landed in the pockets of Malaysia's own prime minister, setting the stage for a courtroom showdown that would shake the nation. July 28, 2020, Kuala Lumpur High Court. The judge's voice echoed across the chamber. The prosecution has successfully proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. For the first time in Malaysia's history, a sitting or former prime minister was declared guilty of corruption. Najib Razak, heir of a political dynasty, architect of one MDB, the man once untouchable, was sentenced to 12 years in prison. As the verdict was read, Najib sat expressionless. Outside, the streets erupted with cheers. Ordinary Malaysians who had lived under decades of corruption felt, for one fleeting moment, that the system had finally worked. Only months earlier, Malaysians had watched investigators raid Najib's homes and wheel out handbags, cash-stuffed suitcases, and diamond-encrusted jewelry boxes. Luxury stacked like evidence in a museum of greed. The man who once ruled from palaces was now staring at the prospect of a prison cell. International headlines blared, former prime minister jailed. The same man accused of orchestrating the world's largest kleptocracy case was now officially a convict. For a country long mocked as a playground for elite thieves, this was Malaysia's redemption arc. But redemption, like everything else in Najib's world, came with conditions. The 12-year sentence and massive fines would never truly stick. For ordinary Malaysians, Najib's guilty verdict was a dream come true. The Untouchable had finally been caged. But inside Kajang prison, the reality was far more complicated. Inside Kajang prison, iron gates clang shut. On paper, Najib Razak is an inmate. In reality, his life behind bars looks nothing like punishment. Ordinary prisoners sleep on hard floors, eat plain rice and watery curry. Najib? He's rumored to enjoy catered meals, private medical treatments, even air-conditioned quarters. Prison guards don't call him inmate. They call him Bosku, his campaign nickname that still echoes among loyalists. And the visitors keep coming. Politicians, allies, and businessmen still walk through Kajang's gates to pay their respects, as if Najib's cell were just another office. For his supporters, he remains a leader. For his critics, he's proof that Malaysia's justice system bends the moment power enters the room. This is the cruelest irony, because for ordinary Malaysians, prison is meant to break you. Cramped cells, overcrowding, the weight of shame. But for Najib Razak, prison looks more like a pause button. A waiting room until the next royal favor, the next legal loophole, the next escape. Before we continue, you're watching Silk Street, where power, betrayal, and collapse collide. Subscribe now, because Najib's redemption was about to vanish. Back inside Kajang prison, the truth becomes clear. On paper, it's justice. In reality, it's illusion. Punishment rewritten for the powerful. And that illusion was about to shatter, because Najib's 12-year sentence was already starting to disappear. By early 2024, whispers began circulating. Najib's 12 years, cut in half, his massive fines, slashed. Overnight, justice looked like a joke. The punishment that symbolized Malaysia's redemption looked more like a political bargain. To his critics, this wasn't clemency. It was corruption wearing a royal seal, a get-out-of-jail-early card for the man who had humiliated the nation. Malaysians erupted in anger. Civil society groups called it a betrayal of justice. On social media, the hashtag Najib Cabal, Najib the Untouchable, began trending. For ordinary citizens, it felt like confirmation of what they had always feared. The powerful never truly pay. And Najib wasn't finished. In June 2025, he was suddenly discharged of 3 money laundering charges, tied to 27 million ringgit. Not acquitted, just quietly released from prosecution because the case had dragged on too long. Think about that. A man accused of looting billions, now walking away from charges worth millions because of paperwork and delays. But even that wasn't Najib's boldest escape. Behind the walls of Malaysia's courts, a new twist was about to surface. A secret addendum, allegedly signed by the king himself, that could move Najib from a prison cell to a mansion. And if it were real, it would prove that for Malaysia's most hated man, even jail was just theater. August 2025. Inside Malaysia's highest court, judges debated a single piece of paper. A supposed royal addendum, a secret order from the former king that, if real, would allow Najib Razak to serve the rest of his sentence not in a prison cell, but in the comfort of his mansion. Najib's lawyers swore the addendum existed, claiming it was quietly attached to the royal pardon that had already cut his sentence in half. But when Malaysia's law ministry searched its records, they said there was no such document. Nothing. Was it real? Was it forged? Or had it been deliberately hidden? If Najib could prove the addendum's existence, he wouldn't just shorten his sentence. He would rewrite what punishment even means. For ordinary Malaysians, prison is concrete walls, metal bars, cold beds. For Najib, it could be a gated mansion with private chefs and staff. And the worst part? Malaysia's federal court didn't throw the idea out. They agreed to let Najib pursue a judicial review, meaning the mystery document could still surface or be legitimized in court. For Malaysians who once celebrated Najib's conviction, it was a gut punch. The man branded as their most hated thief was still maneuvering from behind bars, bending the system to his will. And this time, it wasn't just about corruption. It was about royal power, missing records, and whether Malaysia's monarchy itself had protected a convicted criminal. Because if Najib Razak can turn a prison sentence into house arrest through a document nobody can even find, then maybe, just maybe, the untouchable truly are untouchable. And that untouchability doesn't end with Najib, because his name, his bloodline, and his dynasty still linger over Malaysia, waiting for their chance to return. In Parliament today, a new face takes his seat. Nizar Najib, son of Malaysia's most disgraced prime minister. For ordinary Malaysians, it feels like a nightmare come back to life. The father looted billions, yet the son now walks the same halls of power. Supporters insist Nizar deserves a clean slate, but critics see a dynasty quietly testing the waters. Proof that Najib's downfall may have been a pause, not an ending. And Malaysia has seen this playbook before. Across Southeast Asia, Disgraced families have a way of waiting out the anger, then rising again. The Marcos clan was chased from the Philippines in disgrace, only for their son to return decades later as president. Could Malaysia be next? If Nizar inherits not just his father's seat, but his father's network, then the 1MDB scandal won't just belong to the past. It could shape the nation's future. Najib's scandal didn't end at Malaysia's borders. The money trail stretched across oceans, into Singapore's banks, Switzerland's vaults, and New York penthouses. Authorities seized a $250 million superyacht in Indonesia. They froze luxury condos overlooking Central Park. Diamonds meant for Hollywood starlets were clawed back into evidence boxes. Even Goldman Sachs, one of the most powerful banks on Wall Street, was forced to pay billions in fines for its role in 1MDB. This was no longer just Malaysia's shame. It was a global scandal. Proof that the world's financial elite were happy to look the other way, as long as the money kept flowing. And it placed Najib in infamous company. In Brazil, Lula was jailed for corruption before returning as president. In South Africa, Jacob Zuma dodged justice through endless delays. In Italy, Berlusconi died still rich, still adored, despite decades of scandals. Najib Razak belongs in that same league, disgraced on paper, but never fully erased. His downfall made global headlines, but his shadow still lingers. Today, Najib Razak still sits behind bars, but never like an ordinary prisoner. His appeals, commutations, and mysterious royal addendums prove one thing. Even when convicted, the powerful never stop negotiating. For Malaysians, Najib has become a symbol of betrayal. Once trusted to lead the nation, he is now remembered as the prime minister who stole from his people, humiliated them on the world stage, and yet continues to maneuver like he's still in power. This is why Malaysians call him Cabal, untouchable, because while ordinary citizens face the full weight of the law, Najib bends it. He is convicted, but still influential, jailed, but still in the headlines, punished, but never truly powerless. And Najib didn't build this empire of excess alone. His partner, Rosmah Mansor, Malaysia's most hated woman, is still fighting her own battle. After years of diamonds, handbags, and shopping sprees, she's now staring down the reality of a 10-year prison sentence. If you want to see how Malaysia's so-called First Lady fell from power, that video is live on our channel now. Up next on Silk Street, Riza Aziz, the stepson who turned stolen billions into Hollywood lights. 1MDB dropped its $248 million suit just months ago. But is the real story what wasn't proven or what wasn't allowed to be? Subscribe so you'll be notified the moment that video goes live. I'm John, and this is Silk Street. Power, betrayal, collapse.